Marcus Chun wiped the grease from his hands with a worn cloth, the familiar smell of engine oil and heated metal filling his nostrils. The repair bay of Station Gamma 7 hummed with the constant background noise of ventilation systems and distant machinery. He had been working on the damaged freight hauler for 3 days straight, trying to coax life back into its overloaded fusion drive. The ship belonged to a small trading company that couldn't afford the premium rates of the corporate repair facilities in the inner systems. Another long night, Marcus called out Zara from across the bay. The young apprentice mechanic had been working late shifts too, learning the trade from one of the best engineers in the Outer Rim territories. "These old Terran models don't fix themselves," Marcus replied, sliding back under the ship's belly to access the drive coupling. "Besides, Captain Rodriguez needs this hauler running by tomorrow morning. She's got a cargo run to the Centauri colonies that can't wait." The truth was that Marcus preferred working alone in the quiet hours after most of the station's crew had gone to sleep. During the day, the repair bays were crowded with technicians, supervisors, and impatient ship captains demanding instant solutions to complex problems. At night, he could focus on the intricate puzzle of mechanical systems without interruption. Marcus had earned his reputation through 15 years of solving problems that stumped other mechanics. He understood machines in a way that went beyond technical training. While other engineers relied on diagnostic computers and standard procedures, Marcus could listen to an engine's rhythm and identify problems that scanners missed. His colleagues joked that he could talk to machines, but they always called him when they encountered something truly difficult. The freight hauler's fusion drive had suffered cascade failures in 3 separate systems during a particularly rough jump through hyperspace. The ship's computer recommended complete replacement of the drive core, which would cost more than the aging vessel was worth. Captain Rodriguez had brought the ship to Marcus because she'd heard he could work miracles with damaged equipment. "The containment field generators are completely fried," Marcus muttered to himself, examining the blackened components with a handheld scanner. "But the magnetic bottle assembly is still intact. Maybe I can reroute the plasma flow through the secondary injectors." He had developed his own techniques over the years, combining standard repair procedures with creative engineering solutions. Other mechanics thought his methods were unorthodox, sometimes even dangerous, but Marcus had never lost a ship or caused a containment breach. His approach required understanding not just how systems were supposed to work, but how they could be made to work under non-standard conditions. The station's artificial gravity fluctuated slightly, causing tools to shift in their magnetic holders. Marcus barely noticed the minor disturbance. He had spent most of his adult life on space stations and ships, adapting to the constant small variations in artificial environments. The steady hum of life support systems had become as natural to him as breathing. "Marcus, you need to see this." Zara's voice carried an unusual tension that made him slide out from under the ship immediately. She stood near the bay's main entrance, her face pale in the harsh work lights. Behind her stood a woman unlike anyone Marcus had ever encountered. She was tall and elegant, with an otherworldly quality that seemed to make the air around her shimmer slightly. Her skin had a faint iridescent quality, and her eyes held depths that suggested vast intelligence and age beyond human comprehension. "I am Kalen," the woman said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated strangely in the enclosed space. "I require your assistance with a matter of great urgency." Marcus set down his tools and approached cautiously. In 15 years of working on frontier stations, he had encountered representatives of many different species, but something about this woman set off instinctive warning signals. She moved with predatory grace, and despite her human appearance, everything about her suggested barely contained power. "What kind of assistance?" Marcus asked. "If it's mechanical work, I should mention that my rates for exotic technology are considerably higher than standard repairs." Kalen's expression remained serious. "This is not about machinery, Marcus Chun. This concerns a matter that threatens the stability of multiple star systems. I need someone with your particular skills and reputation for discretion." The use of his full name surprised Marcus. He hadn't told her who he was, and his work coveralls displayed only his first name. Either she had researched him specifically, or she possessed capabilities beyond normal human senses. Both possibilities suggested this conversation was heading somewhere dangerous. "I'm a mechanic," Marcus said carefully. "I fix ships and industrial equipment. If you're looking for a mercenary or intelligence operative, you've come to the wrong person." "You underestimate yourself," Kalen replied. "Your technical expertise is indeed valuable, but that is not why I have sought you out. You possess something far more rare and precious than mechanical skill." She moved closer, and Marcus caught a scent that reminded him of ozone and exotic flowers. The station's recycled air suddenly felt thin and artificial in comparison. "3 months ago, you were declared dead in the destruction of the merchant vessel Prosperity during a pirate attack in the Vega system," Kalen continued. "The official records list you among the casualties. No survivors were reported." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. The memory of that terrible day rushed back with vivid intensity. The Prosperity had been carrying sensitive cargo to a research station when pirates had ambushed them near a gravity well. The ship's captain had tried to escape through a dangerous hyperspace jump, but the damaged navigation system had sent them tumbling into normal space near an uncharted system. "What do you know about that?" Marcus whispered. "Because I was there," Kalen said simply. "I witnessed the aftermath of the crash. I saw you pull 3 injured crew members from the wreckage before the ship's reactor went critical. I watched you repair a damaged emergency beacon with spare parts scavenged from the debris field. The rescue had taken 4 days. Marcus had used every technical skill he possessed to keep the survivors alive while they waited for help. When the rescue ship finally arrived, he had been suffering from severe radiation exposure and exhaustion. The medical team had told him later that he should have died from the reactor leak alone. The official report stated that all hands were lost," Marcus said slowly. "I was in a medical facility for 2 months. When I was released, my records have been updated to show that I had never been aboard the Prosperity." "Your government arranged for your apparent death," Kalen explained. "They believed it would provide protection from those who might seek revenge for actions you were not responsible for. The pirates who attacked the Prosperity were working for someone who had developed a personal interest in you." This was news to Marcus. During his recovery, naval intelligence officers had visited him several times, asking detailed questions about the attack and the cargo the ship had been carrying. They had seemed particularly interested in his technical assessment of the pirate vessels and their equipment. He had assumed their questions were part of a standard investigation. "Who would want revenge against a mechanic?" Marcus asked. "Someone who lost a great deal of money when you repaired a ship that should have remained broken," Kalen said. "The freight hauler you fixed on Ceres Station 6 months before the Prosperity incident was carrying stolen prototype technology. Your repairs allowed the cargo to reach its destination, which resulted in the exposure of a major smuggling operation." Marcus remembered the job clearly. The hauler's captain had claimed mechanical problems during a routine cargo run, but the damage patterns had suggested the ship had been sabotaged. Marcus had assumed it was simple criminal incompetence, possibly an attempt at insurance fraud. He had never imagined that his repair work might have larger consequences. "The leader of that smuggling ring is a being known as Vorthak," Kalen continued. "He is not human, though he employs many humans in his organization. He has considerable resources and a reputation for eliminating those who interfere with his business interests." The name meant nothing to Marcus, but the implication was clear. By doing his job competently, he had unknowingly made himself a target of someone dangerous enough to warrant government protection through fake death. "Why are you telling me this now?" Marcus asked. Kalen's expression became even more serious. "Because Vorthak has discovered that you are still alive. He knows you are here on Station Gamma 7, and he is coming for you. But that is not the worst part of the situation." She paused, as if gathering herself for a difficult revelation. "Vorthak has taken a prisoner," she said quietly. "A young being of my species, someone whose death would cause immense suffering to many innocent people. The prisoner is being held on Vorthack's fortress ship, which is heavily defended and constantly moving through deep space. I still don't understand what this has to do with me, Marcus said. I'm not a soldier or a spy. I can't mount a rescue operation against a criminal warlord. The fortress ship uses technology stolen from my people, Kalen explained. Specifically, it uses biomechanical hybrid systems that combine organic components with artificial machinery. These systems are virtually impossible for ordinary technicians to understand or repair. Marcus began to see where the conversation was heading. But you think I could work with them? I know you can, Kalen said with absolute certainty. Your approach to mechanical problems is intuitive rather than purely analytical. You understand machines as living systems rather than collections of components. This gives you the ability to interact with biomechanical technology in ways that few others can achieve. The explanation sounded flattering, but Marcus remained skeptical. He had always taken pride in his technical abilities, but he had never considered them supernatural or unique beyond normal human variation. Even if I could understand these systems, Marcus said, getting aboard a fortress ship would require military resources I don't have access to. And there's still the question of why I should risk my life for someone I've never met. Kalen moved closer again, and this time Marcus noticed that her eyes held flecks of color that shifted like flames. When she spoke, her voice carried undertones that seemed to resonate in his bones. The prisoner's name is Draken, she said. He is young by our standards, barely more than a child. He was captured while trying to protect a refugee convoy from pirate attacks. His sacrifice saved the lives of thousands of beings who had fled their homeworld during the Civil War. The story touched something in Marcus that went beyond professional obligation. Throughout his career, he had always been willing to take extra risks to help people who couldn't help themselves. The idea of a young being suffering imprisonment for protecting refugees resonated with his personal code of ethics. What species are you? Marcus asked. I've traveled through most of the known systems, but I've never encountered anyone like you. Kalen hesitated before answering. My people are rarely seen in human space. We prefer to remain separate from the political complications that seem to follow wherever humans expand their territory. But circumstances have forced some of us to take a more active role in galactic affairs. The diplomatic phrasing suggested there was much more to the story than she was willing to reveal. Marcus had learned to read between the lines during his years working with traders, smugglers, and other frontier types. Everyone had secrets, and most of those secrets involved avoiding attention from authorities or enemies. You still haven't explained how we would get to this fortress ship, Marcus pointed out. I have a ship, Kalen said simply. It is fast enough to avoid detection and sophisticated enough to penetrate Vorthack's defenses. But it requires a pilot who understands both conventional technology and biomechanical systems. I'm not a pilot, Marcus protested. You are exactly the pilot we need, Kalen replied. Conventional pilots think of ships as machines to be controlled through instruments and interfaces. Biomechanical ships require a more intimate connection between pilot and vessel. You already have the mindset necessary to establish such a connection. Marcus looked around the familiar repair bay, taking in the half-finished projects and well-organized tool racks that represented 15 years of careful work building a reputation and a livelihood. Walking away from all of this to help a stranger rescue another stranger seemed like professional and personal suicide. Why should I believe any of this? He asked. For all I know, you're working for this Vorthack character yourself. This could be an elaborate trap to get me to leave the relative safety of the station. Instead of answering with words, Kalen extended her hand toward a heavy wrench lying on Marcus's workbench. The tool rose smoothly into the air and floated across the bay to settle gently in her palm. She then closed her fingers around the metal, and when she opened them again, the wrench had been twisted into an intricate knot without any visible heat or stress marks. My people possess capabilities that humans would consider supernatural, she said, offering the twisted metal to Marcus. We have been watching your species with interest for many years. Your rapid expansion through space, your adaptability, your talent for solving complex problems under pressure. These qualities have impressed many of us. Marcus took the knotted wrench, marveling at the precise craftsmanship. The metal felt warm, but not hot, as if it had been gently shaped rather than forced into its new configuration. Some of my people believe humans may be the key to solving challenges that have plagued our civilization for millennia, Kalen continued. Others consider your species too chaotic and unpredictable to be trusted with knowledge of our existence. Recent events have forced this debate into the open. What kind of recent events? Marcus asked. The being who captured Draken represents a faction that seeks to exploit the current instability in human space, Kalen explained. Vorthak is not working alone. He has formed alliances with others who believe the time has come to limit human expansion through force rather than diplomacy. The political implications were staggering. If human expansion into space was being actively opposed by advanced alien civilizations, it explains some of the mysterious ship disappearances and equipment failures that have plagued frontier colonies in recent years. It also suggested that Marcus was being asked to participate in something much larger than a simple rescue mission. How do I know that helping you won't make things worse? Marcus asked. If there's already tension between your people and mine, maybe I should stay out of it entirely. Because Draken holds knowledge that could prevent a war between our civilizations, Kalen said urgently. He was serving as a liaison between moderate factions on both sides, working to establish communication protocols that would allow for peaceful coexistence. His capture has eliminated the only voice for restraint among some very powerful and angry beings. Marcus set the twisted wrench on his workbench and walked to the bay's observation window. Beyond the transparent aluminum, stars wheeled slowly as the station rotated to provide artificial gravity. Somewhere out there, political forces he barely understood were shaping the future of human expansion into space. The comfortable isolation of technical work was beginning to feel like willful blindness. If I agree to help, Marcus said slowly, what guarantee do I have that this rescue mission won't just get us all killed? None, Kalen admitted. But I can promise you that refusing to help will definitely result in the deaths of many innocent beings. Vorthak plans to use Draken as leverage to force concessions from my people. If he succeeds, the moderate voices on both sides will be silenced permanently. Marcus turned back to face her, noting again the strange quality of her presence that seemed to bend reality slightly around her. Whatever species she represented clearly possessed technology and capabilities far beyond current human understanding. The idea of working with such advanced beings was both terrifying and irresistibly fascinating. When will we leave? He asked. Immediately, Kalen replied. Vorthak's fortress ship is currently in the Proximus system, but it won't remain there long. We have perhaps 48 hours before it moves beyond our ability to track. I need time to arrange coverage for my current projects, Marcus said. Captain Rodriguez is depending on me to finish repairs to her hauler. I will ensure that Captain Rodriguez receives compensation for any delays, Kalen said. Money is not a concern for this mission. Marcus looked around the repair bay one more time, memorizing details of a life he might never return to. The decision felt simultaneously inevitable and insane, but his instincts told him that Kalen was telling the truth about the stakes involved. All right, he said finally. I'll help you rescue your friend, but I want to know exactly what we're walking into before we leave this station. Kalen's expression brightened with the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from her. Thank you, Marcus-chun. You are making a choice that will be remembered long after both our civilizations have forgotten the current crisis. Let's hope we survive long enough to see whether that's a good thing or not, Marcus replied, already beginning to calculate what tools and equipment he would need for working with unknown biomechanical systems. Marcus followed Kalen through the station's lower maintenance corridors, carrying a hastily packed toolkit and a small bag of personal belongings. She moved with the confident grace of someone familiar with the station's layout, despite claiming to have only recently arrived. The corridors were dimly lit and rarely used except by repair crews, providing a discrete route to the docking bays. "Your ship is registered under what name?" Marcus asked as they walked. "It is not registered in any human database," Kalen replied. "My people prefer to avoid the bureaucratic complications of official documentation when possible." They descended through 3 levels of the station's rotating section before reaching a maintenance airlock that provided direct access to the external docking ring. Kalen produced a small device that interfaced with the airlock controls, bypassing the normal security protocols with disturbing ease. "Station security is going to notice that," Marcus pointed out. "The records will show routine maintenance activity," Kalen assured him. "Your people's computer systems are remarkably vulnerable to subtle manipulation." The casual admission that she could hack station security systems reinforced Marcus's growing understanding that he was dealing with technology far beyond current human capabilities. He wondered what other surprises awaited him aboard her ship. The external docking bay was a vast cylindrical space that rotated independently from the station's main structure. Ships of various sizes and configurations clung to the bay's inner surface like metallic barnacles. Most were standard human designs: freight haulers, passenger shuttles, and small cargo vessels that serviced the frontier colonies. Kalen led him to a section of the bay that was officially listed as under maintenance. The area was cordoned off with warning barriers and automated systems that discouraged casual observation. Behind the barriers, nestled in a berth designed for much larger vessels, sat the most beautiful ship Marcus had ever seen. At first glance, it appeared to be constructed from polished obsidian that reflected the bay's lighting in complex patterns. But as Marcus approached, he realized that the hull wasn't entirely artificial. Organic curves blended seamlessly with technological components in ways that suggested the ship had been grown rather than built. The vessel was roughly the size of a medium courier ship, but its proportions created an impression of speed and power that conventional designs couldn't match. "She is called Whisper of Stars," Kalen said, running her hand along the ship's hull with obvious affection. "She has been my companion for longer than your species has been traveling between stars." The ship's surface felt warm under Marcus's touch, with a faint vibration that suggested living processes rather than mechanical systems. Hairline patterns traced across the hull like veins or neural networks, pulsing occasionally with bioluminescent light. "How do we get inside?" Marcus asked, seeing no obvious airlocks or entry hatches. In response to Kalen's presence, a section of the hull began to iris open like a biological aperture. The opening was perfectly circular and lined with what appeared to be protective membranes that sealed behind them as they passed through. The ship's interior was even more remarkable than its exterior. Curved passages flowed organically from one chamber to another, with surfaces that provided comfortable grip without obvious handholds. The walls emitted a soft blue-green light that seemed to respond to their presence, brightening as they approached and dimming behind them. "The ship is alive," Marcus said, stating what was becoming obvious. "She is a hybrid of organic and technological components," Kalen confirmed. "My people learned long ago that true harmony between living beings and their tools requires genuine partnership rather than domination." They emerged into what Marcus assumed was the control center, though it bore little resemblance to any ship's bridge he had ever seen. The chamber was roughly spherical, with curved surfaces that could serve as floor, wall, or ceiling depending on orientation. Organic-looking control interfaces grew from various surfaces like exotic flowers, each one pulsing gently with internal light. "How do you pilot something like this?" Marcus asked, approaching one of the control interfaces cautiously. "You don't pilot her," Kalen explained. "You partner with her. The ship has her own intelligence and consciousness. She chooses to carry us because she understands the importance of our mission." To demonstrate, Kalen placed her hands on one of the larger control interfaces. The entire chamber responded immediately, with additional displays flowering into existence around them. Marcus could see star charts, system diagnostics, and what appeared to be real-time sensor data, all presented in three-dimensional holographic formats that made conventional computer screens seem primitive by comparison. Try touching the navigation interface, Kalen suggested, indicating a cluster of luminescent nodes near what Marcus had arbitrarily decided was the chamber's front. When Marcus extended his hand toward the interface, he could feel a subtle warmth emanating from it before he made contact. The moment his fingers touched the surface, sensation flooded through his mind. He could suddenly perceive the ship's position in space, feel the gravitational influences of nearby bodies, and sense the complex energy flows that powered the vessel systems. "That's impossible," Marcus whispered, but he couldn't deny the evidence of his enhanced perception. "The ship is reading your neural patterns and establishing a communication link," Kalen explained. "She recognizes your natural affinity for understanding complex systems. Very few beings can interface with biomechanical technology on their first attempt." Through the connection, Marcus could sense the ship's eagerness to begin their journey. There was an intelligence behind the sensation that felt ancient and patient, but also deeply concerned about their mission. The ship understood the stakes involved in rescuing Draken. "She wants us to hurry," Marcus said, surprised that he could interpret the ship's emotional state. "Vorthack's fortress is moving toward a nebula that will provide excellent concealment," Kalen confirmed. "If we don't intercept him soon, we may lose our only opportunity." She began working with multiple control interfaces simultaneously, her movements flowing in patterns that seemed almost like a dance. The ship responded by initiating departure procedures, but Marcus could feel that something was missing from the normal pilot-ship relationship. "She needs both of us," Marcus realized. "You handle the biological aspects, and I handle the technical systems." "Exactly," Kalen said with approval. "Biomechanical ships require harmony between different types of consciousness. My people provide intuitive guidance and emotional connection, while beings like you provide analytical precision and technical understanding." Marcus placed both hands on the navigation interface and allowed himself to sink deeper into connection with the ship's systems. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced, but it felt natural in a way that conventional piloting never had. Instead of manipulating controls to force a machine to obey his commands, he was participating in a collaborative effort with a willing partner. The ship detached from the station's docking clamps and began moving toward open space with fluid grace. Marcus could feel the station's artificial gravity field falling away as they transitioned to the ship's internal gravity generation system. The technology was so smooth that he barely noticed the change. "How long to reach the Proxima system?" Marcus asked. 6 hours in hyperspace," Kalen replied. "But we will not be taking a direct route. Vorthack has allies watching the major transit lanes for anyone attempting to track his movements." Through the ship's sensors, Marcus could observe their departure from Station Gamma 7. The familiar structure dwindled rapidly as they accelerated away from its orbit around the system's gas giant. Soon they were moving beyond the outer planets toward the hyperspace transit point. "Tell me more about Draken," Marcus said as they settled into the rhythm of cooperative piloting. "What makes him so important?" Kalen's expression became thoughtful as she considered how much to reveal. "Draken is the first of our young people to show genuine interest in understanding human culture and technology. Most of my generation views your species as promising, but unpredictable. We admire your ingenuity and adaptability, but we are concerned about your tendency toward conflict and territorial expansion." "That sounds like a fair assessment," Marcus admitted. "We're not exactly known for peaceful coexistence. Draken believes that your species' greatest strength is also your greatest weakness," Kalen continued. "Humans excel at overcoming challenges through determination and creative problem-solving, but you often create unnecessary challenges through miscommunication and cultural misunderstandings." The ship reached the hyperspace transit point and began the complex calculations necessary to enter the alternative dimension where faster-than-light travel was possible. Marcus could feel the ship's consciousness working through navigational problems that would challenge the most sophisticated human computers. He was working on communication protocols that would allow our species to interact without triggering defensive responses on either side, Kalen explained. The protocols take into account the psychological and cultural factors that lead to conflict, not just the technical requirements for information exchange. That sounds incredibly valuable, Marcus said. Why would anyone oppose such work? Because some beings profit from conflict and instability, Kalen replied grimly. Vorthack's criminal organization makes enormous amounts of money by exploiting the chaos that follows in the wake of human expansion. Peaceful coexistence between our species would eliminate many of his most profitable activities. The ship entered hyperspace with a sensation that Marcus could only describe as reality folding around them. The normal three-dimensional universe collapsed into patterns of energy and possibility that his human perception couldn't fully process. Through the biomechanical interface, however, he could sense their progress through the alternative dimension. There are others who oppose Draken's work for different reasons, Kalen continued, once they had settled in a hyperspace cruise. Some of my people believe that contact with humans will ultimately corrupt or destroy our culture. They prefer isolation over the risks involved in establishing meaningful relationships with your species. What do you believe? Marcus asked. Kalen was quiet for several minutes, her hands moving slowly across control interfaces as she made minor course adjustments. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of careful consideration. I believe that isolation is ultimately futile, she said. Your species expands through space too rapidly and adapts too quickly to be avoided indefinitely. The choice is not whether our civilizations will interact, but whether that interaction will be hostile or cooperative. And you think Draken's work could tip the balance toward cooperation? I believe it represents our best hope, Kalen replied. But only if we can rescue him before Vorthack uses his capture to provoke the very conflict we are trying to prevent. Marcus felt a chill as he considered the implications. If Draken's rescue mission failed, it might trigger a war between humanity and an alien civilization with vastly superior technology. The responsibility was staggering for someone who had been fixing ships just hours earlier. What kind of defenses does this fortress ship have? Marcus asked, trying to focus on practical concerns. Vorthack has surrounded himself with stolen and modified technology from dozens of different civilizations, Kalen explained. His ship uses adaptive shielding that adjusts to counter incoming weapons, and his crew includes mercenaries from several species known for their military capabilities. That doesn't sound encouraging for a rescue mission. The fortress ship's greatest strength is also its weakness, Kalen said with a slight smile. All of that stolen technology requires constant maintenance and coordination. Vorthack's technical staff spends most of their time preventing system conflicts between incompatible technologies. Marcus began to see the outline of a plan, and if someone were to introduce additional system conflicts, the ship's defenses might become unreliable, Kalen confirmed. But such sabotage would require intimate knowledge of biomechanical systems, since many of the fortress ship's components are based on stolen technology from my people. They spent the next several hours discussing the technical challenges they would face. Kalen shared detailed information about biomechanical engineering principles, while Marcus provided insights into human technical approaches that might be useful for improvised solutions. The ship's consciousness participated in their planning, offering access to databases of information about various technologies. As they prepared to exit hyperspace, Marcus felt increasingly confident about their technical capabilities. The ship's biomechanical systems provided enormous flexibility and adaptability, while his human training offered analytical approaches that complemented the ship's intuitive processing. Something is wrong, Kalen said suddenly, her hands moving rapidly across multiple control interfaces. Through his connection with the ship, Marcus immediately sensed the disturbance. Their planned exit point from hyperspace was surrounded by artificial gravity wells that would force them to emerge in a specific location. Someone had anticipated their arrival and prepared a trap. Can we change course? Marcus asked. Not without adding several hours to our journey, Kalen replied. And Vorthack's fortress will be beyond our tracking capabilities if we delay that long. Marcus deepened his connection with the ship's navigation systems, analyzing the trap's configuration. The gravity wells were precisely positioned to channel their exit trajectory toward a cluster of heavily armed vessels. It was a sophisticated ambush that demonstrated considerable knowledge of biomechanical ship capabilities. They know about your ship, Marcus realized. This trap is specifically designed to counter your technology. Yes, Kalen agreed grimly, which means we have been betrayed by someone who knows about our mission. The implications were disturbing. Either Vorthak had penetrated whatever organization Kalen represented, or there were members of her own people working against the rescue mission. In either case, they were flying into a trap with no reliable backup plan. We could abort the mission, Marcus suggested reluctantly. No, Kalen said firmly. Draken's life depends on our success, and so does any hope for peaceful relations between our species. We must find a way through. Marcus studied the trap configuration more carefully, using his human analytical training to look for weaknesses that might not be obvious to alien thinking. The gravity wells were positioned with mathematical precision, but they also created interference patterns that might be exploitable. What if we don't try to avoid the trap? He suggested. What if we use it? Kalen looked at him with surprise. Explain. The gravity wells are positioned to channel us toward their ambush point, Marcus said, his hands moving across the navigation interface as he developed his idea. But if we exit hyperspace with exactly the right velocity and trajectory, we can use those same gravity wells to slingshot around their ambush and come at them from an unexpected angle. Through the ship's connection, Marcus could feel Kalen's excitement as she understood his plan. The maneuver would require precise timing and considerable risk, but it would turn their enemy's trap into a weapon against them. It will work. The ship's consciousness communicated through their shared interface, but only if we trust each other completely. Marcus looked at Kalen across the control chamber, noting again the alien beauty and power that surrounded her like an aura. He was trusting his life to someone he had met less than 12 hours ago, flying into combat aboard a ship he barely understood, to rescue someone he had never met. Let's do it, he said. They began the final approach to normal space, their minds linked through the ship's biomechanical interface in a partnership that transcended the boundaries between human and alien consciousness. Whatever happened next, Marcus knew that his quiet life as a frontier mechanic was over forever. The transition from hyperspace felt like falling through layers of crystallized lightning. Marcus gripped the navigation interface as reality reasserted itself around them. The ship's biomechanical systems, translating impossible dimensional mathematics into sensations his human nervous system could process. Through the shared consciousness link, he felt Kalen's steady presence anchoring their trajectory as they emerged into normal space. Immediately, proximity alarms flooded through the ship's awareness. 3 heavy cruisers hung in perfect formation around their exit point, their weapon systems already charged and targeting the exact coordinates where any biomechanical ship would appear. The trap had been laid with devastating precision. Now, Kalen whispered, her hands dancing across control surfaces with inhuman speed. Marcus fed power to the ship's maneuvering systems, while simultaneously calculating vectors through the artificial gravity wells their enemies had created. The ship responded to their combined will, diving toward the nearest gravity well at an angle that defied conventional physics. Their whole temperature spiked as they skimmed the edge of controlled space-time distortion. The pursuing cruisers opened fire immediately, but their targeting solutions had been calculated for a conventional escape attempt. Energy beams and missile salvos passed harmlessly through space where their ship should have been, while Marcus and Kalen guided their vessel through a gravity-assisted trajectory that bent around the ambush formation like water flowing around stones. Impossible, came a transmission from the lead cruiser. No ship can maneuver like that in a controlled gravity field. Marcus smiled grimly as they completed their slingshot maneuver and emerged behind the ambush fleet with their energy signature masked by gravitational interference. The biomechanical ship's living systems had adapted to the artificial gravity wells in ways that purely technological vessels couldn't match. "They're trying to reposition," Kalen observed as the cruisers began turning to pursue them. "Let them," Marcus replied, feeling the ship's eagerness for the next phase of their plan. "We don't need to fight them. We just need to get past them." The ship's consciousness had been analyzing their opponents during the escape maneuver, cataloging weapon signatures and defensive systems. The cruisers were heavily armed, but designed for conventional space combat. They couldn't match the biomechanical vessel's ability to adapt and improvise. Marcus guided them into the shadow of a large asteroid, using its bulk to mask their approach toward the inner system where Vorthack's fortress ship waited. The pursuing cruisers would spend precious minutes repositioning and scanning for their energy signature, time that would allow them to reach their primary target. "Impressive flying for a mechanic," Kalen commented with genuine admiration. "I told you I wasn't a pilot," Marcus replied. "But this ship doesn't need a pilot. It needs a partner." Through the biomechanical interface, Marcus could feel the ship's systems adapting continuously to their changing situation. Hull configuration shifted subtly to optimize their stealth profile, while internal systems rerouted power to maintain perfect silence. The vessel was actively participating in their mission with an intelligence and creativity that conventional technology couldn't provide. The inner system revealed itself gradually as they approached Proxima's radiation-soaked star. Several planets orbited within the habitable zone, but most were barren rocks scorched by stellar radiation. Only one world showed signs of significant atmosphere and surface water. "There," Kalen said, indicating a sensor contact near the system's largest gas giant. Vorthack's fortress ship hung in orbit around the giant planet like a malignant growth. The vessel was easily 10 times larger than any human warship Marcus had ever seen, its hull bristling with weapons and defensive systems. Docking bays large enough to accommodate small fleets dotted its surface, while energy shields shimmered around critical sections. "How do we get inside something like that?" Marcus asked, awed despite himself by the fortress's scale. "The same way you would repair a damaged system," Kalen replied. "We find the weak points and exploit them." She shared tactical data through their connection, highlighting sections of the fortress where stolen biomechanical technology had been integrated with conventional systems. The hybrid installations were powerful but unstable, requiring constant maintenance to prevent catastrophic failures. "If we can access one of the biomechanical integration points," Kalen explained, "we can introduce cascading system failures that will disable large sections of the fortress." Marcus studied the fortress's configuration, applying his engineering experience to understand how its various systems might interact. The ship's consciousness provided additional analysis, identifying patterns of energy flow and control pathways that human sensors might have missed. "The docking bay ventilation systems," Marcus said suddenly, "they're tied into the biomechanical atmosphere processors to handle the exotic breathing requirements of different species. If we could get inside the ventilation network, we could access the control systems from within," Kalen finished. "But that would require us to abandon the ship and infiltrate the fortress on foot." The ship's consciousness conveyed wordless disapproval of any plan that involved leaving its protection. The living vessel had bonded with both of them during their journey, and the prospect of separation caused genuine distress. "No," Marcus said, responding to the ship's emotional state. "We go in together. All of us." He began developing a more complex infiltration plan, one that would use the ship's adaptive capabilities to their advantage. Instead of trying to fight their way into the fortress, they would exploit its hybrid technology to gain access through deception rather than force. The fortress scans incoming ships to verify their technology signatures, Marcus explained. "But what if our ship could mimic the signature of one of Vorthack's own vessels?" "Biomechanical ships cannot simply copy other technologies," Kalen protested. "Our systems are too integrated with organic processes." "But this ship has been analyzing the fortress's energy patterns," Marcus pointed out. She understands how the stolen biomechanical systems interact with conventional technology. She could generate false readings that would make us appear to be a damaged vessel returning for repairs. Through their shared connection, the ship conveyed cautious optimism about the plan. It would require precise control and perfect timing, but the deception was theoretically possible. Kalen spent several minutes in deep communion with the ship's consciousness, sharing memories and technical knowledge that would allow the vessel to understand Vorthack's technology well enough to mimic it. The process was clearly taxing for both of them, requiring access to information that had been carefully protected. "It will work," Kalen said finally, "but the deception won't last long once we're inside the fortress. We'll have perhaps 30 minutes before their security systems detect the inconsistencies." 30 minutes should be enough, Marcus replied with more confidence than he felt. "Once we find Draken, we can use the ship's real capabilities to escape." They spent the next hour preparing for the infiltration. The ship began altering its biomechanical signatures to match the patterns of damaged vessels in the fortress's database. Marcus used the ship's fabrication systems to create specialized tools for working with hybrid technology, while Kalen prepared information packets that would explain their presence if questioned by security forces. As they approached the fortress ship's outer perimeter, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Somewhere within that massive structure, a young being was imprisoned for trying to prevent a war between civilizations. The success or failure of their rescue mission might determine the future of human expansion into space. "Contact from Fortress Control," Kalen announced as they entered the outer defense perimeter. "Damaged biomechanical vessel requesting emergency docking," Marcus transmitted, using the cover story they had prepared. "We have multiple system failures and require immediate technical assistance." Vessel designation and crew manifest came to reply from a voice that sounded bored with routine security procedures. Kalen provided false identification that the ship's consciousness had constructed based on captured data from the fortress's databases. The biomechanical systems generated authentication codes that would pass casual inspection while hiding their true nature. "Proceed to Docking Bay 7, the fortress controller instructed. "Maintain minimum speed and follow the guidance beacons exactly." Marcus felt nervous sweat forming as they approached the fortress's hull. Up close, the massive structure revealed details that were both impressive and disturbing. Weapon emplacements tracked their movement with mechanical precision, while sensor arrays powerful enough to penetrate most forms of stealth technology scanned them continuously. "Energy signature analysis in progress," Kalen reported, monitoring the fortress's scanning procedures through the ship's sensors. "They're comparing our readings to their database of known vessel types." The ship's deception held as they followed guidance beacons through a maze of defensive installations toward the designated docking bay. Marcus could see other vessels in the surrounding bays, including ships from several species he didn't recognize. Vorthack's criminal organization was clearly international in scope. Docking Bay 7 was a cavernous space designed to accommodate vessels much larger than their ship. Magnetic clamps secured their hull, while atmospheric force fields sealed the bay for pressurization. Through the ship's external sensors, Marcus could see armed guards taking positions around the bay. "Security team approaching," Kalen observed. 4 individuals, armed with energy weapons. "Remember, we're desperate refugees seeking repairs," Marcus said as they prepared to leave the ship. "Act damaged, but not threatening." The ship's consciousness conveyed reluctant agreement with their plan, while expressing strong concerns about their safety. The living vessel would maintain its false identity while monitoring their progress through passive sensors. Marcus gathered his toolkit and followed Kalen toward the ship's iris-like airlock. As the organic portal opened, he caught his first taste of the fortress's atmosphere. The air was thick with the scent of dozens of different species, mechanical lubricants, and something that might have been fear. The security team leader was a tall humanoid with gray skin and multiple sets of arms. His universal translator rendered his speech in heavily accented standard. State your business and duration of stay, he demanded, scanning them with a handheld device that registered their life signs and equipment. Engine coolant leak in the biomechanical systems, Kalen replied, affecting a tone of wearied desperation. We need access to proper repair facilities before the containment fields fail completely. The security officer's scanner beeped as it analyzed their false identification codes. Marcus held his breath, hoping that the ship's deception would hold under close scrutiny. Authorized for temporary docking, the officer announced after a tense moment. Base services will direct you to appropriate repair facilities. Do not leave the designated areas without escort. As the security team moved away to process other arrivals, Marcus felt a surge of relief mixed with anticipation. They were inside Vorthax's fortress, surrounded by enemies and cut off from outside help. But they had successfully established their cover story and gained access to the facility where Draken was being held. Now comes the hard part, Kalen whispered as they began walking toward the bay's exit. Through their connection with the ship, Marcus could feel the vessel's ongoing efforts to maintain its deceptive energy signature while mapping the fortress's internal structure. The ship's consciousness was already identifying potential routes to the detention areas and planning escape vectors for when their mission was complete. The fortress's corridors were a bewildering mixture of architectural styles from dozens of different civilizations. Technology from various species had been integrated without regard for aesthetic consistency, creating a functional but chaotic environment. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows, while the constant hum of incompatible systems created an underlying tension that set Marcus's teeth on edge. The detention areas are 3 levels down, Kalen said quietly as they followed directional signs toward the repair facilities. But we'll need to access a maintenance terminal to get detailed layout information. They entered a large chamber filled with workstations and diagnostic equipment designed for servicing biomechanical technology. Several technicians were working on damaged systems, their concentration focused on complex repair procedures. The perfect cover for 2 strangers asking technical questions. Marcus approached a maintenance terminal and connected one of his diagnostic tools, using it to mask his true purpose while accessing the fortress's internal databases. The ship's consciousness provided assistance through their connection, helping him navigate security protocols that would have been impossible to crack using purely human technology. Got it, Marcus whispered as he downloaded detailed schematics of the detention levels. Draken is being held in a maximum security cell designed specifically for biomechanical beings. The cell specifications were sobering. Energy-dampening fields would prevent any biomechanical systems from functioning normally, while monitoring equipment would detect any attempt at escape or rescue. Getting Draken out would require disabling multiple security systems without triggering general alarms. There's something else, Marcus said as he continued analyzing the fortress's systems. The detention level has independent life support that's tied into the main biomechanical atmosphere processors. If we could create a cascade failure in that system, we could force an emergency evacuation of the entire detention level, Kalen finished. But that would also put Draken at risk. Not if we time it right, Marcus replied, his engineering mind working through the possibilities. The emergency protocols would automatically transfer prisoners to secure holding areas on other levels. If we could intercept that transfer through their connection with the ship, Marcus felt approval for his plan. The vessel's consciousness understood the technical requirements and was already calculating optimal timing for the various system failures they would need to orchestrate. It could work, Kalen agreed, but we'll need to split up. I'll go to the detention level to locate Draken, while you access the Atmosphere Processing Center to initiate the cascade failure. The plan was dangerous and relied on precise timing, but it offered their best chance of success. Marcus gathered his tools and prepared to leave the repair facility, hoping that his reputation for mechanical miracles would prove useful in an entirely new context. As they prepared to separate, Kalen placed her hand on his shoulder. The touch conveyed warmth and something that might have been affection, along with a deep sense of trust that surprised him. "Thank you," Marcus Chun, she said quietly. Whatever happens next, you have already proven yourself worthy of the friendship between our peoples. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility and opportunity that came with her words. In the space of a single day, he had gone from fixing ships to potentially shaping the future of interstellar relations. The quiet mechanic was gone forever, replaced by someone who understood that some repairs were worth any risk. Marcus made his way through the fortress's labyrinthine passages toward the atmospheric processing center, his toolkit feeling heavier with each step. The corridors were dimly lit and filled with the constant background noise of incompatible technologies struggling to work together. Emergency patches and jury-rig connections were visible everywhere, testament to the ongoing challenge of maintaining Vorthack's stolen equipment. The Atmospheric Processing Center was located deep within the fortress's core, surrounded by multiple layers of security and redundant systems. Marcus had studied the schematics carefully, but seeing the facility in person revealed additional complications. The biomechanical components were more extensively integrated than the technical specifications had indicated. Identification and clearance code demanded the security guard stationed at the center's entrance. Marcus presented the forged credentials that the ship's consciousness had prepared, hoping that their deception would hold under close scrutiny. The guard scanner analyzed his fake identification while cross-referencing his supposed repair authorization against the fortress's work order database. Atmospheric processor malfunction on level 7, Marcus explained, affecting the weary tone of a technician dealing with routine equipment failures. Command wants a full diagnostic before the situation affects the detention areas. The guard barely looked up from his scanner as he waved Marcus through the checkpoint. Apparently, atmospheric system problems were common enough that they didn't warrant special attention. The processing center's main chamber was a vast cylindrical space that extended through multiple levels of the fortress. Biomechanical trees grew from nutrient baths, their living branches filtering and processing atmosphere for hundreds of different species. Conventional atmospheric processors worked alongside the organic systems, creating a complex ecosystem of air recycling and environmental control. Marcus had never seen anything like it. The engineering required to balance so many different atmospheric requirements while maintaining system stability was staggering. Unfortunately, that same complexity created vulnerabilities that he could exploit. He located the primary control nexus and connected his diagnostic equipment, using it to mask his true intentions while mapping the system's operational parameters. Through his connection with the ship, he could sense Kalen's progress toward the detention level while feeling the vessel's growing anxiety about their separation. The atmospheric system's control pathways were a nightmare of overlapping technologies. Biomechanical processors required careful balance of organic nutrients and atmospheric composition, while conventional systems demanded precise pressure and temperature regulation. The two technology types were held in harmony by automated control systems that were already showing signs of strain. Perfect, Marcus muttered as he identified the cascade failure points that would trigger emergency protocols. His plan was elegantly simple in concept, but devastatingly complex in execution. By introducing subtle malfunctions in the biomechanical processors, he could force the automated systems to compensate using conventional technology. This would create an imbalance that would cascade through the entire atmospheric network, ultimately triggering emergency evacuation procedures for any areas dependent on biomechanical life support. The timing had to be perfect, too fast, and security would immediately suspect sabotage. Too slow, and Kalen might be caught in the detention area before the emergency evacuation could provide cover for Draken's rescue. Marcus began his work methodically, introducing microscopic adjustments to the biomechanical processor's nutrient feeds. To casual observation, his actions would appear to be routine maintenance. The ship's consciousness provided guidance through their connection, helping him understand the biological aspects of the hybrid systems. Warning: atmospheric composition variance in Sector 7 announced the fortress's automated systems as the first phase of Marcus's sabotage took effect. The processing center's technicians immediately began responding to the alert, running diagnostics and checking system parameters. Marcus joined their efforts, ostensibly trying to identify the source of the problem, while actually ensuring that their troubleshooting efforts would amplify the cascade failure. Biomechanical processors showing stress indicators, reported one of the technicians. Nutrient balance is shifting outside normal parameters. Compensating with conventional systems, replied the shift supervisor, authorizing exactly the response Marcus had anticipated. As conventional atmospheric processors began working harder to compensate for the failing biomechanical systems, stress levels throughout the network began rising exponentially. Marcus continued making subtle adjustments, ensuring that each attempted fix would create new problems elsewhere in the system. Through his connection with the ship, Marcus felt Kalen's growing urgency as she navigated the detention-level security systems. She had located Draken's cell, but was having difficulty accessing the biomechanical containment systems without triggering alarms. Critical atmospheric failure in detention level. The fortress's emergency systems announced as Marcus's cascade failure reached its intended target. Emergency lights began flashing throughout the processing center as automated systems initiated evacuation protocols for any areas dependent on the failing atmospheric network. Marcus felt a surge of satisfaction as his plan unfolded exactly as intended. All personnel evacuate affected areas immediately, commanded the fortress's emergency systems. Prisoner transfer protocols activated. Marcus gathered his tools and left the processing center along with the other technicians, blending into the crowd of personnel responding to the emergency. Through the ship's connection, he could sense Kalen's relief as security forces began evacuating the detention level according to standard protocols. The fortress's corridors filled with controlled chaos as emergency procedures took effect. Security teams moved prisoners to temporary holding areas while maintenance crews struggled to identify and repair the atmospheric failures. Marcus used the confusion to navigate toward the prisoner transfer route, where Kalen would attempt to intercept Draken during the evacuation. The temporary holding area was a large chamber designed to accommodate prisoners during facility maintenance or emergency situations. Security was lighter than in the permanent detention areas, but still formidable. Armed guards monitored groups of prisoners while automated systems scanned continuously for escape attempts. Marcus positioned himself near a maintenance access point where he could observe the prisoner transfer process while appearing to work on atmospheric system repairs. Through the ship's connection, he felt Kalen's presence moving through ventilation shafts toward the holding area. The first group of transferred prisoners included several species Marcus didn't recognize, all of them looking confused and frightened by the sudden evacuation. Security guards maintained careful spacing and constant vigilance, clearly experienced in handling dangerous individuals. Then Marcus saw him. Even without Kalen's description, he would have recognized Draken immediately. The young being moved with fluid grace despite restraint shackles, his reptilian features bearing an unmistakable resemblance to Kalen's alien beauty. But where Kalen's presence suggested power and confidence, Draken's bearing conveyed intelligence and compassion that was visible even under the current circumstances. Draken's eyes met Marcus's briefly across the holding area, and something passed between them that transcended species barriers. The young alien understood immediately that Marcus was there to help, and his subtle nod confirmed his readiness to cooperate with whatever rescue plan was developing. "He isn't aware you're still alive," Kalen's voice whispered through the ship's connection as she prepared to act. The words were directed not at Marcus, but at Draken. Through their biomechanical link, Marcus suddenly understood that Kalen was referring to Vorthack's belief that she had been killed during a previous rescue attempt. The criminal warlord thought he was safe from retaliation because he believed his most dangerous opponent was dead. The revelation added new urgency to their mission. If Vorthack discovered that Kalen had survived, he might relocate Draken to an even more secure facility or simply kill him to prevent future rescue attempts. Kalen emerged from a ventilation grate near the holding area's rear wall, moving with predatory silence as she approached the guard station there. Marcus watched in fascination as she seemed to flow from shadow to shadow, her movements so fluid that the security cameras might not have registered her presence. The first guard never knew what hit him. Kalen's touch sent him into immediate unconsciousness, and she caught his falling body before it could alert his companions. The second guard turned to the sound of something that might have been footsteps, but saw only empty corridor before Kalen's hand found his neck. Marcus initiated the second phase of his atmospheric sabotage, creating a localized failure in the holding area's environmental systems. Emergency lighting flickered as backup systems activated, providing the additional distraction Kalen needed to reach Draken's position. Emergency in Sector 12. Marcus announced through the facility's communication system, using his forged security credentials to redirect attention away from the holding area. Atmospheric breach in progress. All available personnel respond immediately. Security forces began moving toward the fabricated emergency, leaving the holding area with reduced supervision. Kalen used the confusion to disable Draken's restraint shackles, while Marcus created additional false alarms to maintain the distraction. Draken moved immediately toward the escape route Kalen indicated, his movements hampered by weeks of confinement, but his determination clearly unimpaired. Marcus felt profound relief as he watched the young alien follow Kalen toward the ventilation system that would lead them back to their ship. Prisoner escape in progress. The fortress's automated systems announced as security scanners finally detected the disturbance in the holding area. Seal all exits and initiate facility lockdown, commanded a voice that Marcus recognized as belonging to Vorthak himself. Through the ship's connection, Marcus felt the vessel's growing alarm as fortress security systems began implementing comprehensive containment protocols. Blast doors slammed shut throughout the facility while armed response teams moved toward the holding area. Marcus abandoned his position at the maintenance access and ran toward the docking bay where their ship waited. The atmospheric sabotage had served its purpose, but now they needed to escape before the fortress's defenses could trap them permanently. The corridors filled with armed security personnel as Marcus navigated toward the docking bays. His forged credentials still provided access to most areas, but he could sense that the fortress's security systems were beginning to analyze the pattern of malfunctions and false alarms that had facilitated their rescue operation. Sabotage confirmed in Atmospheric Processing Center, announced the facility's emergency coordinator. Security breach is not accidental. All personnel submit to immediate identification verification. Marcus quickened his pace as he realized that their deception would be exposed within minutes. Through the ship's connection, he could sense Kalen and Draken making their way through the fortress's ventilation system, but they were still several levels away from the docking bay. He reached Docking Bay 7 to find it surrounded by security forces conducting systematic searches of all berth vessels. The ship's consciousness conveyed controlled panic as armed guards approached its hull with scanning equipment designed to penetrate most forms of stealth technology. Biomechanical vessel showing anomalous readings, reported one of the security technicians. Energy signature doesn't match registered vessel specifications. Marcus realized that their ship's deception was failing under intensive scrutiny. The living vessel could mimic damaged biomechanical systems for casual inspection, but detailed analysis would reveal inconsistencies that couldn't be explained away. Arrest the crew for questioning, ordered the security team leader. Marcus felt the ship's consciousness preparing for desperate action as guards moved toward its airlock. The living vessel was ready to defend itself, but doing so would eliminate any chance of maintaining their cover story. Through their biomechanical connection, Marcus sensed Kalen and Draken approaching the docking level. They were close to safety, but not close enough to reach the ship before security forces discovered the deception. "Trust me," Marcus whispered to the ship's consciousness as he made a decision that would either save them all or get them killed. Instead of trying to maintain their cover story, Marcus activated his emergency credentials and approached the security team leader with apparent urgency. "I need to speak with Vorthak immediately," Marcus announced. "I have information about the prisoner escape that requires his personal attention." The security officer looked skeptical, but the apparent sincerity of Marcus's request gave him pause. "What information?" "The escaped prisoner has contacted outside allies." Marcus lied smoothly. "There's a fleet of biomechanical ships approaching this system to mount a rescue operation. Vorthak needs to know immediately." The fabricated intelligence was plausible enough that the security officer couldn't afford to ignore it. Within minutes, Marcus found himself being escorted toward the fortress's command center, where Vorthak was coordinating the search for his escaped prisoner. Through the ship's connection, Marcus felt Kalen and Draken reaching the docking bay. The security force's attention was focused on the supposed fleet threat, providing exactly the distraction they needed to board their vessel and prepare for departure. Marcus had bought them time, but now he was trapped in the heart of enemy territory with no clear escape plan. As guards escorted him toward a meeting with one of the galaxy's most dangerous criminals, he could only hope that his sacrifice would give Kalen and Draken the opportunity they needed to escape. Vorthak's command center was a testament to stolen power and technological excess. Holographic displays showed tactical information from across multiple star systems, while communication arrays maintained contact with criminal organizations throughout human space. At the center of it all stood Vorthak himself, a being whose appearance justified every nightmare Marcus had ever had about alien predators. The criminal warlord was easily 7 feet tall, with chitinous armor plating that gleamed like black metal in the chamber's harsh lighting. 6 arms moved independently as he manipulated multiple control interfaces, while compound eyes tracked several conversations simultaneously. When he turned his attention to Marcus, the human felt like prey being evaluated by an apex predator. "You are the mechanic who sabotaged my atmospheric systems," Vorthak stated in a voice that sounded like grinding stone. "My security analysis indicates that the cascade failure was initiated from the processing center precisely when you were working there." Marcus forced himself to remain calm despite the overwhelming presence of the alien crime lord. Through his connection with the ship, he could sense Kalen and Draken preparing their vessel for immediate departure. He needed to maintain Vorthak's attention for just a few more minutes. "I'm trying to save your life," Marcus replied, affecting the urgency of someone delivering critical intelligence. "The biomechanical ships approaching this system aren't here for a simple rescue. They're planning to destroy your entire operation." Vorthak's compound eyes focused on Marcus with laser intensity. "Explain." "The prisoner you're holding isn't just some diplomatic liaison," Marcus continued, improvising desperately while monitoring his friend's progress through the ship's connection. "He's the heir to one of the most powerful biomechanical civilizations in the galaxy. His people consider his capture an act of war." The lie was plausible enough to give Vorthak pause, but Marcus could see suspicion growing in the alien's predatory features. The criminal warlord hadn't survived this long by accepting convenient intelligence without verification. "My sources indicated that the prisoner was a minor functionary," Vorthak said slowly. "Someone whose disappearance would attract minimal attention." "Your sources were wrong," Marcus insisted, "or they were lying to you. Either way, you're about to face retaliation from beings with technology that makes your fortress look like a child's toy." Through the ship's connection, Marcus felt the vessel's engines coming online as Kalen initiated departure procedures. The living ship was eager to escape, but it was also reluctant to abandon Marcus to whatever fate awaited him. Vorthak moved to a communication console and began issuing orders in several alien languages. Marcus caught references to sensor sweeps and defensive positioning, suggesting that his fabricated fleet threat was being taken seriously. The deception was working, but it was also escalating a dangerous situation. "Long-range sensors detect no approaching vessels," reported one of Vorthak's technical officers. "Biomechanical ships use stealth technology that your sensors can't detect," Marcus countered quickly. "By the time they appear on your displays, they'll already be inside your defensive perimeter." The alien crime lord's 6 arms moved in what Marcus interpreted as a gesture of impatience or frustration. If what you say is true, then this facility is already compromised. We must evacuate immediately. Marcus felt a surge of alarm as he realized that his deception might be working too well. If Vorthak ordered an evacuation, it would complicate Kalen and Draken's escape while potentially exposing them to pursuit by the entire criminal fleet. Evacuation isn't necessary, Marcus said quickly. Your fortress has sufficient firepower to repel the attack, but only if you position your defenses correctly. I can help you coordinate the defensive strategy. Through the ship's connection, Marcus felt Kalen's surprise at his change in tactics. But he could also sense her understanding that he was trying to prevent pursuit while creating an opportunity for his own escape. You offer to help defend my facility against your own allies? Vorthak asked, his voice carrying dangerous undertones. I'm a mechanic, not a soldier, Marcus replied. I don't care about politics or species loyalty. I care about staying alive, and that means being on the winning side. The crude appeal to self-interest was exactly the kind of motivation Vorthak would understand. The criminal warlord had built his organization by exploiting beings who put personal survival ahead of abstract principles. Demonstrate your value, Vorthak commanded. Show me how to optimize my defenses against biomechanical attack. Marcus approached the tactical displays with apparent confidence, while secretly praying that his limited knowledge would be sufficient to maintain the deception. Through the ship's connection, he could sense the vessel beginning to move away from the docking bay, while fortress security remained focused on the imaginary fleet threat. Biomechanical ships attack in organic formations that adapt continuously to defensive fire, Marcus explained, using his understanding of the ship's capabilities to create plausible tactical scenarios. Your conventional targeting systems will have difficulty tracking them. He began manipulating the holographic displays to show defensive formations that would position Vorthak's forces away from the most likely escape vectors. The criminal warlord observed intently as Marcus demonstrated tactical concepts that were actually designed to help Kalen and Draken reach safety. Interesting approach, Vorthak admitted. Your understanding of biomechanical tactics is more sophisticated than I expected from a human mechanic. Through the ship's connection, Marcus felt the vessel clearing the fortress's immediate defensive perimeter. Kalen and Draken were safe, but now Marcus needed to extricate himself from an increasingly dangerous situation. There's something else you should know, Marcus said, preparing to reveal a truth that might save his life. The atmospheric sabotage wasn't just a distraction for the prisoner escape. It was preparation for the incoming attack. Vorthak's compound eyes narrowed with suspicion. Explain. Biomechanical ships require specific atmospheric conditions for optimal performance. Marcus continued, weaving truth and fiction together in a desperate attempt to maintain credibility. By destabilizing your atmospheric systems, we've created environmental conditions that will give the attacking fleet a significant advantage. The explanation was partially true. Biomechanical ships did perform better in certain atmospheric conditions, though the sabotage Marcus had performed wouldn't significantly impact space-based combat operations. Repair the atmospheric systems immediately, Vorthak ordered his technical staff. Restore full environmental stability throughout the facility. It's too late for that, Marcus said. The damage has already created cascading failures that will take days to fully repair. But I can help you compensate by modifying your defensive systems to work more effectively under the current conditions. Through the ship's connection, Marcus felt Kalen's growing concern for his safety as the vessel moved toward the edge of the star system. The living ship was transmitting continuous updates on fortress activity, revealing that Vorthak's forces were indeed repositioning according to Marcus's fabricated tactical recommendations. You seem remarkably well-informed about biomechanical capabilities, Vorthak observed, moving closer to Marcus with predatory intent. Perhaps you are more than a simple mechanic. Marcus felt cold sweat forming as the alien crime lord's massive form loomed over him. He had pushed the deception as far as it would go, and Vorthak's suspicion was reaching dangerous levels. I've worked on biomechanical systems before, Marcus admitted carefully. It's specialized knowledge, but not supernatural. Show me, Vorthak commanded, indicating a control interface that Marcus recognized as part of the fortress's stolen biomechanical technology. Marcus approached the interface with apparent confidence, while secretly hoping that his connection with Kalen's ship would provide enough understanding to maintain his cover story. When he placed his hands on the biomechanical controls, he felt an immediate response that surprised him. The fortress's stolen biomechanical systems were crude and badly integrated compared to Kalen's ship, but they were still based on the same fundamental principles. Marcus found that he could interface with them using techniques he had learned during their journey, though the connection felt sluggish and unresponsive. Impressive, Vorthak said, watching as Marcus demonstrated basic control over the biomechanical systems. Very few beings can establish that level of interface on their first attempt. Through the fortress's biomechanical network, Marcus suddenly sensed something that made his blood run cold. Somewhere within the massive structure, another consciousness was observing his every move. The presence felt ancient and malevolent, with an intelligence that dwarfed anything Marcus had previously encountered. The dragon woman isn't the only one of her kind in my service, Vorthak said, apparently noticing Marcus's reaction. I have been collecting rare beings for some time, each one contributing unique capabilities to my organization. The implications were staggering. If Vorthak had captured and enslaved members of Kalen's species, it explained how he had acquired so much biomechanical technology. It also suggested that the rescue mission had been far more dangerous than any of them had realized. My master will be interested in meeting you, Vorthak continued. He has been seeking someone with your particular combination of technical skill and biomechanical sensitivity. Through the ship's connection, Marcus felt Kalen's shock as she received the same information he was discovering. The mission had just become infinitely more complex, as they now knew that other members of her species were being held prisoner somewhere within the fortress. Emergency alert announced the fortress's automated systems. Unauthorized vessel departure from Docking Bay 7. Biomechanical ship has left without clearance. Vorthak's attention immediately shifted to the tactical displays as his security forces reported the ship's escape. Marcus felt a moment of relief that Kalen and Draken had successfully reached safety, followed immediately by terror as he realized his own position had become hopeless. It appears your friends have abandoned you, Vorthak observed with what might have been amusement. How unfortunate for someone who was so eager to help with my defensive preparations. Marcus maintained his connection with the escaping ship while preparing for whatever fate awaited him in Vorthak's hands. Through the biomechanical link, he could sense Kalen's anguish at leaving him behind, along with her determination to mount another rescue operation. Don't come back for me, Marcus transmitted through the connection, hoping his message would reach them before they moved beyond communication range. Complete the mission. Warn your people about what Vorthak has been doing. The alien crime lord moved closer, his compound eyes reflecting the command center's harsh lighting like multifaceted jewels. You will have the opportunity to serve a greater purpose than simple mechanical repair, he said. My master has plans that require someone with your unique capabilities. Marcus felt the presence of the ancient consciousness pressing against his mind through the fortress's biomechanical network. Whatever being Vorthak served possessed power beyond anything Marcus had imagined, and that power was now focused entirely on him. Through the ship's connection, he sensed Kalen and Draken reaching the edge of the star system where they would be safe from immediate pursuit. The rescue mission had succeeded, but at a cost that none of them had anticipated. As guards moved to escort Marcus to whatever fate awaited him, he drew strength from knowing that his sacrifice had achieved something meaningful. Draken was free to continue his work promoting peace between species, while Kalen could warn her people about the threat.